Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Govern. I'm very excited today to talk about vaccine mandates and the history and the legality of these claims that are being made about how important they are to impose on us today. With me in the studio today is going to be Joel Ard, and you will not want to miss this one. Okay, Joel, I'm really glad that we had you in the studio. I'm dragging you here, keeping you here longer, so we don't get you here very often, and so I'm really happy to talk about this, and this is a topic that's on everybody's mind right now, of course, because vaccine mandates are in the news, and are they legal, are they not? There's lawsuits going on about it, and there's all kinds of armchair attorneys that are coming out of the woodwork, Wall Street Journal editorials, right, claims everybody's suddenly a legal expert now, just like they're all immunologists and doctors, everybody is. So let's just talk about this. Since you're an attorney, you're familiar with these arguments that are being made right now. And I know we can't comprehensively cover everything, but let's talk about the justification being used behind, or the legal justification way they're using behind these vaccine mandates, and the fact that you can lose your job in your retirement and be ostracized for the rest of your life if you don't take it. This kind of situation that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it's a certainly a fraught situation right now, and people are rightly concerned about it. And I'll say at the outset, you say lots of people suddenly are immunology experts and constitutional law experts. I'll say up front, I certainly read a lot on this. I've thought about it a lot. In no way an expert on this. It's an area of law that very few people have done very much on. And so I'll tell you, I don't think I know what the answer is here under most circumstances, maybe any circumstances. And I think people who tell you they're quite sure what the answer is are maybe overconfident.
Sure.
So it's very,
fair enough, yeah.
Open questions. Let me jump off, though, with some comments on a Wall Street Journal editorial this morning that said, look, we've had vaccine mandates for a long time. It's just not even really an open question. Of course the government can compel you to be vaccinated. They've said that since 1905. And that case doesn't quite say what many people think it says.
So this is the Jacobson case.
This is the Jacobson case.
Okay.
So it started in a town in Massachusetts. Smallpox was running through the town again. Smallpox is a respiratory virus. It's spread through air droplets. That's, I think, familiar to us these days. But it kills 30% of people it infects. It's a horrible disease. Went on for quite a long time, killed very, very many people. And so this town in Massachusetts said, look, we've got a smallpox outbreak going. Everybody's got to get vaccinated. Or pay a $5 fine. If you decline the vaccination, pay us $5. Inflation adjusted, it's $100, $150 in 2021 dollars. That's probably $1,500 in 2022 dollars.
Right.
We'll see where that goes.
But exactly.
So that's not an insignificant amount of money, but a relatively modest fine. You don't lose your job. You don't any of these other things. If you refuse to pay the vaccine and refuse to pay the fine, we'll put you in jail. But it's a $5 fine to avoid the vaccine. And Mr. Jacobson said, I had an adverse reaction to a smallpox vaccine in the past. My doctor agrees that I shouldn't have it. And they said, that's fine. Just give us the $5. And so this is clearly a test case because he refused to pay $5 and instead sued the town and took the case through Massachusetts Supreme Court and to the United States Supreme Court. So there is a lot of kind of soaring rhetoric in the U.S. Supreme Court decision about the common good and how we need to, stand together in solidarity. And of course, these vaccines are helpful and we can get you to take them. But behind all this, the mandate was not get vaccinated or be arrested, get vaccinated or go to jail, get vaccinated or lose your job, get vaccinated or be put in a quarantine although you're healthy. It was get vaccinated or pay $5. That case gets relied on by the Supreme Court in a number of subsequent cases where they very quickly stop remarking on what the underlying law was in Jacobson. One of the worst excesses of the U.S. Supreme Court, just up there on the list of cases that if anybody's heard about it, they know these are the terrible Supreme Court cases like Dred Scott, like Plessy v. Ferguson, like Korematsu, Buck v. Bell. Where the state of Virginia decided that it could compel people to be sterilized if it thought that they were unfit for society and shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. And Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes famously said, yes, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough, and relied on Jacobson.
As
and
a
said,
core
as a
justification.
core justification,
Okay.
we can compel you to be vaccinated. We can compel you to be drafted into the Army, and of course he was a Civil War veteran. Of course we can compel you to be sterilized if we decide that that is in the common good. That's not good law, and not a good idea, by the way.
And shocking to people in modern, like if they understand this is what they're using as the background. That's
Right.
That's not what most
Right.
people would want to say that they
Right,
support.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's not really, I would say it's not clear, absent all the highly politicized state of discussion about vaccine mandates today, if you'd asked somebody in 2019, hey, is Jacobson still good law? I'm not sure they would have said yes. Now, nobody was asking that question. It
Right.
wasn't, fraught with an issue like this. But Jacobson may well have been overturned by, of all things, Roe v. Wade.
Oh, explain that.
Well, people, I think, talking about this vaccine mandate, you often hear people ask, how is it that the Constitution says that a woman has bodily autonomy to make her own decision about whether to terminate a pregnancy, but she doesn't have the bodily autonomy to decide whether or not to be vaccinated against coronavirus? Aren't those two at odds with one another?
Right.
Well, they are. They are. And the Supreme Court in Roe didn't explicitly, write out a list of here are all the cases we're overturning.
Right.
But they're rejecting reasoning from a whole lot of past cases in deciding that the constitutional right to privacy that they had been talking about for a few years extended to a right to decide whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. And so they seem to have thrown out Jacobson in Roe. So people who are highlighting that
Right.
apparent tension, you're right, there is a tension there. That may well be true, but nobody in a calm and reflective moment, absent an ongoing political debate about a vaccine, really ever
Right.
looked back and said, here's the thread and where the thread breaks. But I think it may very well have broken in Roe.
And that's interesting because obviously, I would say the majority of people, this isn't a fair statement to always make, but I would say it's become politicized, this idea of these mandates. And they're breaking in these certain categories where I would say on average, it's the more conservative folk that are opposed to the mandates being imposed on them. And it's the more, for lack of a better term, but just so people who support the government's position. And those positions would probably, if you were to survey them, would probably be different in how they view Roe v. Wade. And yet, we're just running this weird legal,
That's
situation.
absolutely true. It's a really weird, the Venn diagrams don't have a ton of overlap in the middle of
Right.
on either side of that, and in part because it has become so unbelievably politicized about this particular virus and particular state government responses and federal government responses to it. So again, I don't claim to be an expert. I will say the other issue going on with vaccine mandates right now, a lot of them, and you can see this based on the lawsuits that have been filed in Washington State, touch on unionized public employees and their collective bargaining
That's
agreements.
correct, yeah.
Boy, I don't know anything about that. So when I did get calls from folks who were members of public employee unions, I just said, where's your union rep? Where's your union lawyer? This goes into your CBA. I don't know anything about collective bargaining agreements and the law around public union employment.
Right.
Obviously, lawyers who do know that have looked at it and taken up that cause and are challenging the governor on some of those aspects of the mandates.
Right.
I dare say there's some pretty good challenges there because the government's hands are constricted. They're tied more in adding conditions of employment into a previously negotiated collective bargaining agreement.
Got it.
I don't know the metes and bounds of that at all, but it's a very different issue than private and non-union employment.
Right. Well, we're definitely we're just entering this realm that I don't think anybody's been in before, but I really appreciate you talking about this because this Jacobson case obviously comes up frequently, and it's good to get a different perspective on it. I don't think we'd have the same kind of drama if the state was saying pay the fine,
right?
And you could still be employed. You aren't going to lose your living forever. You're not going to be ostracized for the rest of your life. And so I think that to understand the background on that, I think is important, and I haven't heard anybody else talk about it. So thank you for doing that today.
Great pleasure.
Yeah. With that, if anybody wants to learn more, go to ard.law if you want to find out what Joel is up to. And if you want to learn more about what's going on in Washington State, go to wethegovern.com. I will try to provide some links to these cases in the description below so you can find out more if you want to do your own research. And remember, the future belongs to those who show up.